Our words this morning come from the poet Emily Dickinson. Now I have to say, most of the time Emily Dickinson's poetry kind of goes one in one of my ears and out the other, so I'm overcoming a long-term bias here. This, however, is a beautiful poem. It's entitled, "We Grow Accustomed to the Dark." We grow accustomed to the dark when light is put away and when the neighbor holds the lamp to witness her goodbye, a moment. We uncertain step for newness of the night, then fit our vision to the dark and meet the road erect. And so, of larger darknesses, those evenings of the brain when not a moon disclose a sign or star come out within. The bravest grope a little and sometimes hit a tree directly in the forehead. But as they learn to see, either the darkness alters or something in the sight adjusts itself to midnight, and life steps almost straight. When I was a little girl, I might have been 8 years old or so. My brother would have been 5. I don't remember our exact age, but we were pretty little. We lived next door. We lived in these row house type apartments, and we lived next door to a family my brother and I became very close to. We never met the father. We were told he was ill and just could not see anyone. I don't remember the mother's name, but I remember her as being one of the kindest people I've ever known. She welcomed us, two boisterous children, not always super well behaved, but she welcomed us as lovingly as I can ever remember anyone treating us. They had a son who at the time was probably a year or so older than I was, and his name was Ami. They were Jewish. And he too was kind, and they were very quiet. He too was very kind, and he tentatively would play with us. And then one day, my brother, who just loved Ami's mother so much, took a ballpoint pen and drew numbers on his wrist because she had numbers tattooed on her wrist. And he did this because he, of course, did not know what it was, but he wanted to be like her. And when my mother saw the numbers, she truly freaked out and kind of made him wash them off, and she seemed to be really angry. I think she was afraid. And she explained to us, not fully and not with all the difficult details, but she explained to us what that meant. And I, of course, had been born in France in 1953 while my father was with the U.S. Army still in Germany. I share this experience with you because for many reasons, but one of which is that love shows up in many different ways. I don't remember Ami's mother having any particular kind of painful reaction, and she treated us with the same kind of love, for as long as we lived next to one another. So this morning I want to tell you a story of 9 women whose story I didn't learn about until recently, but 9 women mostly from France. 2 of them were Dutch. One was of Spanish origin, but she had been raised by a foster family in the south of France. And these women came from many different kinds of backgrounds, but they all joined the French resistance against the Nazi invasion of France and of the world as the Third Reich saw it. Some of these women came from wealthy families. Many of those families had lost their wealth and were as destitute as so many families were during the war. Others of the women came from working class, communist or socialist families, but each of them made the decision to quite literally put their lives at risk and to join the French resistance. They were couriers. Women had an easier time, even though being alone and traveling at night, they were subject to assault, but it was easier for them to move around. Men had to have a higher level of identification and were more frequently stopped by German authorities. These women ran, in some cases, very large networks. Some of them fought in combat, in skirmishes against German forces. They collected fugitives and gave them refuge. They distributed food. They did many, many things. And yet, they had no political rights. Women did not get the vote in France until late 1944, which to me is astounding, but this is what there is. And still, they risked their lives and fought to disrupt the relentless onslaught of German armies that, not content with conquest, employed, as you know, employed great cruelty. Each of these women were betrayed by their networks, and they fell into enemy hands. And by different pathways, many of them were tortured. I'm not going to give details. I will just say that waterboarding was one of the typical tortures employed, but I'm not going to give more details. They all ended up at the Ravensbrück camp, which was, I believe, the first, or certainly one of the few camps built specifically to house women prisoners. It was built to hold 6,000 prisoners. At its height, there were 50,000 women there, living in conditions that you can imagine. You can imagine how difficult they were. Or maybe we don't want to imagine. I know sometimes I don't. But they came to Ravensbrück, and it turned out that two of the women had known each other in their high school years. The two of them already were friends. And by different pathways, once again, these women began to know each other and became a cohesive group. At one time, as I said, the occupying forces, the conquering forces, continued to expand the camp to include more and more prisoners, and these women were used as forced labor, largely to build armaments in the defense, offense industries. As many as 92,000 prisoners lost their lives to starvation and disease and medical experiments. But it's difficult to know because the Nazi forces destroyed records. They did not want the world to know of what was happening. I'm going to say their names, and some of these are nicknames, some of these are their given names. Because in our own small way, I hope that we can witness them, maybe together. Helene, Zaza, Mena, Lon, Gigi, Jose, Zinka, Jackie, and Nicole. These 9 women not only learned how to survive in this really hideous climate, but they encountered and gave profound kindness, not only to one another, but to the women they met in the camp. They learned how to become part of a broader network, again, of kindness and support. And believe it or not, in this place that at least I would view as unadulterated evil, they found kindness from some of the guards and the foremen. At one time, the 9 were detailed to work in a particular munitions plant in Leipzig, and the foreman who was in charge of them, his name was Wilhelm. He was a great supporter of the Nazis and a great supporter of Hitler, and yet Wilhelm stole food to give to them. When they were sick, he tried to cover it and help them. He took care of them. And when the end of the war was in sight, Wilhelm one night left them a particular large amount of food, and they found him. He had taken his own life because he could not handle what these people he had revered, what had happened, and he could not handle the shame. One foreman in another location gave Helene, who spoke 5 languages and was kind of the leader of the group, he gave her a pair of wire cutters and helped her hide them in case they ever had the chance to escape. They not only shared the meager food they had with one another, they shared it with the women who were ill. And each of them utilized their own particular skills to build this network of kindness in this place of darkness. They faced, without flinching, they faced the deep inhumanity that surrounded them, and they mined that darkness for their own goodness. I don't know how else to put it, because that's what they did. To maintain, they mined that darkness to resist by maintaining their own humanity. Zinka had given birth to a baby while she was first imprisoned in a French prison before she was taken to Ravensbrück. She named her baby France. Her jailers allowed her to be with her baby for 18 days, and then they took the baby away. And throughout her years in the camp, her friends and this group of 9 and other women who surrounded her celebrated baby France's birthday every year. And they told her, you will be reunited with your baby again. And one of the women, Mena, who was a really good seamstress and found little scraps and had hidden a needle and thread, made a little stuffy bear to give to France when they would be reunited. And in fact, they were reunited after the war. Over time, the name of this baby and the name of the country they were fighting for kind of became the same thing. In the waning days of 1944, when the Germans really knew that the war was over for them, they became desperate. They thought that perhaps they started destroying documents, and they decided on a horrific last-ditch effort of marching 750,000 prisoners from various camps to take them either on a straight-up death march, because if they died, they couldn't tell their stories, or take them to work in munitions factories. If they didn't survive, as I said, so much the better. So 750,000 enslaved prisoners embarked on these marches. Only 2/3 of them survived the marches themselves. But Helene had her wire cutters, and the group of 9 did their best to stay together to support. Some of them got very sick with typhus. This was a devastating disease. And one day they were on the march, maybe the second or third day of the march, and they walked by a field You know rapeseed flowers, you know how they are bright yellow? And they noticed that women in front of them in these lines were laughing and throwing themselves into these flowers and grabbing them and just throwing them in the air and just rejoicing in the beauty of these flowers. And they realized that nobody was trying to stop them, that there were actually no guards in this part of the line. Otherwise they might have been exterminated. And so the 9 took their chance, and they threw themselves into the field of flowers and hid in a ditch. And they weren't discovered, and the line marched on without them, and they started their path to freedom. And it would take a long time. And they met both kindness and unkindness along the way. But they did. They made it. Eventually to Paris, and along the way, what did they do? They used again their skills. They used what they had to continue helping one another. I guess it moves me to remember this and to try to honor them. People gave them food and clean places to sleep in their barns. Some people immediately called the Gestapo to come and kill them, although thankfully they were hidden and that didn't happen. Mena, who could cook, was a great cook. Zinka was a nurse. She helped with her nursing skills. Helene spoke 5 languages, including German, fluently, so she could pretend that they were not prisoners. They took their coats that had big X's on the back and they tried to turn them inside out, and they did everything they could and succeeded. Eventually, they came home. Many of them came back to their families. And when they tried to tell their stories, nobody wanted to hear them. It's over. We want to go back to the way it was. And some of their families said to them, if you talk about what happened to you, no one is going to want to marry you. Repeat it again to you. I want us to share their stories so that we can honor them and honor the fact that we come from people of such courage and such determination. People who put everything, not only to resist what is unbearable and cruel, but put everything they have, whatever they have. Lon was known as a really bossy and domineering one, and yet it was her courage that got them out of a lot of trouble along the way. The woman who could sew helped them get their, once they were out, their rags to look more like real clothing. After the war, the French punished all the women who they believed had, quote, collaborated. Women who had been forced into sex work, women who had been forced to do laundry. And they paraded these women through the streets and shaved their heads. I say this because all of us have within us the capacity for cruelty and forgetfulness, but all of us have the greater capacity to grow. And if no one wanted to hear their stories then, maybe we can hear their stories now. And they were only 9 of thousands and thousands of women and men who resisted the evil then and who are resisting the evil now. So my friends, I'm going to say their names right now, and if you wish to, you can repeat them after me. Helene, Zaza, Mena, Lon, Gigi, Jose, Zinka, Jackie, Nicole, we remember you and we honor you. Amen, dear ones, Ashe, and blessed be.